Hey everybody, I'm Miguel the Movie Encyclopedia, and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this channel, I talk about my feelings and thoughts and my reviews on the newest blockbuster movies. So let's get started. After several delays due to COVID-19 and Warner Bros.' recent announcement that all their future movies from now until the end of 2021 will be coming out on HBO Max for free, as well as a theatrical release, DC Comics kicked off this new streaming strategy with one of their newest films, Wonder Woman 1984, starring Gal Gadot and Chris Pine. I won't give too much away in the plot synopsis because the trailers did a really good job of keeping the plots under wraps. I'll just give you what has been revealed from the trailers. The movie follows Gal Gadot's Diana Prince, aka Wonder Woman, as she is reunited with her deceased love, Steve Trevor, played by Chris Pine, and has to take on two iconic DC villains, Maxwell Lord, played by The Mandalorian's Pedro Pascal, and Barbara Minerva, played by SNL and Bridesmaid alumni Kristen Wiig. Despite very early positive critical response, the Rotten Tomatoes score for this movie has sadly dropped significantly over the last week from over 80% to now under 62%. It went from a certified fresh score to now just barely fresh as of December 29th. I wouldn't be surprised if it honestly dipped below to the Rotten score. The movie has received very mixed reviews from audiences upon its Christmas release, with fans either hating or loving the movie. However, my thoughts slightly differ on both. The movie features great performances across the board, tons of 1980s cheese and color and saturated culture, and a decent story with a great ending. But the overall film is not nearly as good as the original Wonder Woman, as it has some issues that weren't found in the original film. First, let's talk about what I really liked. All the actors in this film are absolutely fantastic. Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman is great as Diana Prince once again, especially now that Diana has now lived a life on our world for the last 70 years, and is now well versed in our culture. But she's still very haunted by the loss of her one true love, Steve Trevor, which has caused her to live a life of isolation and loneliness. All that changes when Chris Pine's Steve Trevor miraculously returns to life. In this film, Trevor is the fish out of water, and Diana is the guide to this new world, which was an interesting dynamic switch compared to the original Wonder Woman. But what really surprised me about Pine's performance in this movie was how he ended up being the true voice of reason for Diana, especially in the second half of the film. Pine's Steve Trevor has always been one of Chris Pine's most down-to-earth characters, but this movie takes it to a whole other level, and I absolutely loved it. He's filled with a lot of wisdom despite not knowing much about 1980s America, and yet he's also so kind and heartwarming. Pine and Gadot still have great chemistry, only 3 years after Wonder Woman, and they truly proved to be the heart and warmth of this film. As for Kristen Wiig and Pedro Pascal as Barbara Minerva, aka Cheetah, and Maxwell Lord, both characters have great performances behind them and are shockingly compelling despite issues with the writing. Every scene with them showed me a new side of the two actors that I love very much, and I hope to see from more in the coming years. The story of Wonder Woman 1984 honestly feels like a time capsule. It all plays out like an old school 1980s superhero movie, from the tone to the plot to the magic, and especially the production design and costumes. Wonder Woman 1984 calls back to a simpler time in DC Comics, to simple classic DC movies like Superman 2 with Christopher Reeve and the Tim Burton Batman movie starring Michael Keaton. The plot is incredibly simple, but also kind of batshit crazy if I'm being completely honest, to the point where if this movie was any other film, it would have been completely awful. But the third act is absolutely brilliant as the movie goes for a touching and deeply thematic ending that not only brought all three acts of the film together nicely, but gives audiences a lot to think about afterward in regards to humanity and greed and how to overcome such human failings. It really was quite a beautiful message. Not quite as beautiful as Disney Pixar Soul, which I'll talk about in another review, but honestly, close. Now onto the problems with this movie. Remember how I said this movie plays out like a 1980s superhero movie? Well, that was both a pro and a con with Wonder Woman 1984. The best superhero movies in this day and age, thanks to Marvel and even some early DC Comics films, have evolved so much since the 1980s that they are able to blend thought-provoking and sometimes deeply thematic storytelling with the action, humor, and heart we have found in our superheroes for several generations. Wonder Woman 1984 feels like a step back from this era in the first two acts. Don't get me wrong, the first two acts were fun and interesting from a filmmaking standpoint, but it didn't feel nearly as strong or as compelling as the first two acts of the original Wonder Woman movie. That was a disappointment, especially for me. I really loved the first Wonder Woman movie, and even though, like I said, first two acts are fun, I wish they were more compelling. Also, even though Kristen Wiig and Pedro Pascal gave really great performances in this movie, their characters sadly felt very underdeveloped from beginning to end. I believe audiences will find a little bit of themselves in one or both characters, and their motives are actually pretty relatable, but Cheetah and Maxwell Lord felt very two-dimensional and lacked the complexity of characters like Ludendorff or Shazam's villain, Dr. Sivana, or even Ares. I mean, say what you want about that CGI battle, you can't deny that David Fulis made some really good points at the end of Wonder Woman. Maybe if we saw Cheetah and Maxwell Lord again in another DC movie, they could be more fleshed out, but honestly, given the reaction towards this movie, I honestly feel like we're never going to see those characters again. So in conclusion, Wonder Woman 1984 feels like a return to a simpler time in superhero cinema, and features a great return for Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman and Chris Pine's Steve Trevor. However, its overly simplistic plot and lack of complexity in its villains keep it from reaching the same heights as the 2017 Wonder Woman. The movie does have a powerful message and a great ending that I think will leave DC fans thinking, that does set this movie apart from other superhero movies, but it's sadly not enough to make this movie great. I'm going to give this movie a 7.3 out of 10 stars. This was good, but it definitely could have been great. Well, thank you all for watching this video. If you like this, make sure to comment, subscribe, like, and subscribe to this channel. Make sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I go under the title Miguel the Movie Encyclopedia, just like this channel. Also, if you like hearing me talk about movies, TV shows, and video games, make sure to check out my podcast, the Movie Encyclopedia Podcast. I'm available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, and Google Podcasts. Really, anywhere you can get a podcast, I'm there. Until my next video, make sure to stay safe and have a happy holidays.